All right, we're going to dip out of Donald Trump there, speaking at NATO about Ukraine and about Iran, and listen then to the French president, also at NATO, Emmanuel Macron.
Long-range missiles, early warning systems. These are European-based solutions. This is what we'll be doing with the Rafale fighter jets, with long-distance missiles, but also with GWELs, with our German counterparts. So we are developing European capabilities. And this is what we have been also doing in our command centers with AI. So we are doing everything that we can do to ensure strategic defense mechanisms within NATO. And France brought forward a number of proposals just last month in terms of early nuclear deterrence. And this is just one part of the puzzle. And with ongoing conversations with numerous countries, we are coming forward with new proposals and trying to create a situation where we can fight for further peace and stability. We are ensuring peace on the European continent. This is what we have been defending when we have fought for Ukraine and when we have sought stability in the Middle East. So we have reiterated our commitments. We have reiterated the list of capabilities that we are willing to put forward, and with the coalition of the willing, we will have a new meeting where we can talk about fight against phantom fleets, new capabilities, mobilizing industrial support for Ukraine with the organization of multiple drills and military exercises together. And then we will also obviously attend our Bastille Day and National Holiday parades as a showcase of what we can do in France. And it will be a good moment to have allies by our sides, because security in Europe is something which depends upon what is happening now in Ukraine, and therefore the 13th of July is a very important milestone in my eyes. It marks a consolidation of numerous initiatives that were bolstered during this summit. And then with the G7 meeting in Evian, we were able to reiterate this feeling of support between America, Europe, Asia. We speak with one voice when talking about Ukraine and the Near East. And this is a good sign, because we are fighting for national sovereignty, stability, and upholding international law. This is what we need to continue to fight for, and that is the very meaning behind the NATO alliance. I will now answer any questions you may have.
Oui, je pense qu'il y a eu une violation de cet accord par les frappes iraniennes qui ont conduit à une réponse américaine.
Strikes from Iran, which called for a response from the United States, and I think those attacks were a mistake. They were prepared for in Islamabad. My understanding of the situation is that the meetings that have been planned will take place, and we need to make sure that those meetings can take place in a sense of calm while sticking to the agenda. Peace and stability. Reopening of the Strait of Hormuz with no conditions, with no fees or tolls. Peace and stability in Lebanon, which means withdrawal of Hezbollah troops, any foreign troops from Lebanese soil, and everything needs to be done so Lebanon can protect itself. And we need a security framework to protect all from Iranian ballistic missiles. I'm not speaking of political fiction here, and I think here we have an alliance. We have solidarity between all members, and we also need to show solidarity that we won't attack each other. So I don't believe what you are claiming. So we need to keep a level head and focus on the real matters. There are technical groups that have been put together and will continue to meet. NATO drills and exercises will continue to go ahead, and we will take part in them. There was Arctic Endurance, which is one of the drills which we'll continue to take part in so that we can showcase what our forces can do. In light of what I have just said, we will take action knowingly, while being fully informed. Having de-escalated the situation with the signing of the peace agreement, that does not justify what took place in March. So the choice that was originally made remains relevant. We have anti-mine teams out there, and we're going to ensure that we can protect our allies in the region. And our involvement remains relevant. If the situation were to deteriorate, then, in that case, I will consider any necessary deployment. But that is not the case for the time being. Negotiations, again, within the framework of the previous agreement, will continue. I didn't hear any such comments, be it in the rooms nor in our discussions, and I don't think they reflect the decisions that have been made today. We will continue to work. And we'll continue to work in a professional way. We spoke of all key topics, bilateral agreements, be it for defense, education, multiple matters which affect citizens on both sides of the table. And again, we spoke with a constructive mindset. We spoke of Ukraine, we spoke of the Near East, the Far East, Syria, Lebanon, Iraq. And I'm very happy with the conversation that we were able to have and that between our respective ministers. As I have said in the past, work is underway between France, Italy and Turkey, and we will make a good headway. As I have already said, when I'm traveling abroad, I don't comment on domestic matters, as you know. From where I currently stand, in light of the Constitution, I cannot stand for an election. However, I will remain president right up until the last second, so I will not comment French politics. I am here today to defend, protect and represent our country, to make decisions and to take action so that we can ensure our freedom. And in that capacity, I will make sure that the electoral campaign can go ahead with peace, calm, so that everyone can speak their voice and defend their own political positions. Again, I am not campaigning because I will not be up for election next year. Sorry, I did not hear the beginning of your question. I heard of no conditions or statements. What President Trump said is about each own's involvement, and what I would like to mention is that we had fantastic open conversations, and that shouldn't cast a shadow of a doubt on what is happening here. Here we are talking about redeployment of their efforts, which may be quite legitimate, and this is dependent on European mobilization. But we shouldn't take action simply because people are asking us. We should take action because we want to take action within Europe. So I'm not going to comment any side comments that others may have made. I think we have enough challenges on our own doorstep, challenges that are affecting our societies. That is what we should be focusing on, the real issues. I think we need to continue to be quite innovative, which is what we're going to talk about on the 13th of July. And we have to involve multiple industrial operators from all of our countries so that we have anti-ballistic systems in place. It is for the security of our own people. Therefore, we need to focus on the fact that a number of countries already have missile reserves that are using Patriot systems, which is not the case of France, as you probably know. And there is considerable work being put into anti-ballistic capabilities. And with the coalition of the willing on the 13th of July, we, along with our industrial counterparts, we will focus on these new capabilities. So we need to give heed to President Zelensky's very legitimate request. Again, in light of Monday, we're going to consolidate all of the work that we have already started with the Phantom Fleet, with Ukraine's security for the future being key topics.
Non, pas du tout.
Not at all. President Trump's comments and all of the comments that I have heard from all leaders, again, be it in bilateral or in plenary sessions, were all quite respectful, and no one was being specifically targeted, which I believe is the right way to make headway on such important topics.
J'espère. Et donc on avance sur beaucoup de nos sujets. Oui. On a eu un très bon échange.
Yes, we had a very frank, open conversation, and I think that it is all quite possible and feasible. Thank you very much.
All right, Emmanuel Macron, the French president there, taking some questions from journalists at this NATO summit in Ankara, Turkey. And listening to that with me was Angela Diffley. Angela, we went pretty quickly from Donald Trump there, who's also speaking at NATO, to Emmanuel Macron. Let's talk about Macron first of all. He spoke about a number of different international issues. What struck you particularly about what it was he was focusing on?
He was quite clear that there had been a violation by Iran on the Memorandum of Understanding. This morning, as you mentioned, Nadia, Trump appeared to be in a really bad mood.
Yes.
He berated Spain. He said NATO had let down the United States. And he talked about Greenland again. It appears from what we're hearing that at that leaders' summit, he calmed down considerably, did not mention any of those points, Greenland, Spain, or the Memorandum of Understanding, and was much more easy to deal with. We, I think, are getting just trickles of what is likely to be in the final declaration. The draft I had a look at a little while ago, there is, and this already has been made clear, an ironclad commitment to Article 5 of NATO, which is that mutual defence pact. An attack on one is an attack on all. That is important. It shouldn't need to be stressed at every NATO meeting, but with Donald Trump's regular dismissal of NATO, his regular questioning of its usefulness, his regular placing in doubt whether the US would bother to come to the aid of any other NATO members, that is useful to have. That said, you know, what Trump says one day and then what he says the next day.
Or even hour to hour today.
Hour to hour, or this morning to now, indeed. But that is something. It is expected as well that there will be something on the fact that Russia is considered a threat to NATO members and that Iran should never have nuclear weapons. We also know, this was made clear by Macron, that 70 billion euros of money is to be made available to Ukraine. That is this year, and possibly the same amount again next year. That is huge. Much of that burden now has, rather than being shared, they talk in NATO now about shifting the burden, and much of that now is coming from European Union funds. There is a bit of a clash, an interesting clash. Emmanuel Macron has been very much behind the idea that Europe needs to stand on its own 2 feet. Aside from the strategic autonomy idea, he has also within that pushed for many years for Europe to be manufacturing more. And with this idea of giving more money to Ukraine, the European Union has been convinced by Macron that it must manufacture more. And there is a bit of a clash because Rutte is quite keen for a lot of the spending to be with American companies, partly because of his general need to keep Donald Trump on board. Trump is transactional. Rutte reasons that if weapons and in defence industry equipment are bought from United States companies. That will interest Donald Trump more. But there is a little bit of a clash there because Europe wants it spent in Europe. Zelensky has said, he said yesterday, Europe must start manufacturing now anti-ballistic defence systems because Ukraine is using, we heard there, the US-made Patriot interceptors to stop Russian ballistic missiles. It doesn't have enough of them. He begged, said, will you please start manufacturing these now? So there's a lot going on in these meetings.
Yeah. And Zelensky saying that after another night where we've seen Ukrainians killed in Russian strikes, that sort of hammering home their need for those air defences. Now, in that meeting, those public exchanges between Donald Trump and Zelensky a short while ago, Trump, interestingly, I thought, sort of at pains to emphasise that his relationship with Zelensky today significantly better than he was, and he alluded pretty directly to the very tense exchange that they had back at the White House some months ago now, where he was really quite rude to Zelensky. Trump, though, saying today, look, our relationships have improved, we get on well, and he says that both Russia and Ukraine want to see a settlement now. Do you think that that's where Donald Trump's focus is?
Well, look, it's good news for Zelensky for now. As you say, it's not so long ago he was telling us that the Iranians were nice people. This morning, the Iranian negotiators were nice people. This morning, he said they were scum. What is any of it worth? But that's good news for the time being, as you say, for Zelensky. It was rather uncomfortable for 10 seconds, that allusion to the Oval Office meeting. Well, probably wasn't great for Zelensky to be listening to be reminded of that. But what has really changed, of course, is that, to the astonishment of everyone, I remember sitting here 4 years ago, everyone said Kyiv will have fallen by next week. This was after the Russian invasion. To everyone's astonishment, Ukraine's drone idea, its capacity to use drones, and now drones that penetrate far into Russia as well and can knock out logistics hubs, that has really, it appears, changed the momentum of the war. And Donald Trump is now taking Zelensky seriously. Not so long ago, he was telling Zelensky he had no cards to play. He does appear to see things very differently. And meanwhile, we are seeing Vladimir Putin appearing to be somewhat on the back foot and to be having a bit more pushback in Russia as more and more Russian soldiers die.
And finally then, Angela, and we mentioned that communique from NATO, details of which are coming out now, their sort of final statement. Overall, what's your sense as to how this NATO summit is going when we weigh up those complex issues of Ukraine, Iran and the very mercurial Donald Trump?
Yeah, again, as with all of these meetings, we said it about the G7 with Donald Trump, expectations are deliberately lowered beforehand. These meetings are usually, people's best hope is that Trump doesn't have some sort of major tantrum. Maybe this morning almost qualified. He was pretty rude about Spain, said there would be no further trade with Spain. Spain is, of course, negotiates as part of the European Union. It can't be separately cut off, as the European Union quickly reminded Donald Trump. But Rutte had wanted to keep this smooth. We know how, maybe I don't want to say it, obsequious he is with Donald Trump. Yeah. His whole mission is to keep Trump on board. It does matter. It does matter for everyone, because even though the European Union is resigned to the fact, and Canada, that they will have to stand on their own 2 feet much more, it's going to take time. And in the meantime, it would be very useful to keep Donald Trump on board. For Rutte, much of this he hoped would be about defence industry spending, contracts. There's been a lot of deal signing at this NATO summit, which is unusual. That is not usually its main priority, but a lot of defence companies are there and deals are being signed. That is the Trump way, no doubt, and a good move on the part of Rutte. It's not over yet.